Welcome to your crash course in EU5. Inspired by my desire to convince my friends to play with me, I've decided to make a whole channel surrounding our grand strategy and gaming shenanigans. My name is Genesis. Welcome to the Ward Table. This video will touch on each section and each tab of the game, so you're better prepared to jump into a game of EU. Let's dive in. So in order to start a game, you're going to highlight New Game. You can either left click for select any country or right click for recommended. We'll go ahead and do select any country so you can get a idea of how big the map is. Once you finally load in, you're going to be able to zoom out and see the whole world. So you can pick any country you like. Recommended countries are going to be places like Castile, France, England, Naples, and I believe Holland. These countries are going to generally have country events or country bonuses surrounding them, so they'll give you a little bit of flavor while playing them. If you play as a small country, you may just not have as much things going for the nation itself, so your experience definitely varies based on who you play. One of my favorites is definitely going to be Castile. I almost always play them first in every Paradox game. So click on them, hit play, load in. You can start the game. The first thing I suggest doing is do the learning walkthrough. We'll go over the basics. So first thing about EU is you're going to have a bunch of different map modes, and if you want to go to this bar down here and take a look, you can click on things such as tax base, raw materials. These are all the resources that each location produces. Then you have things such as control, how well you exert control over a nation, how close locations are to your capital, the different markets that are in the world, population. So play around with the different map modes. This will kind of give you an overview of what the world looks like, how to make decisions with the nation that you're playing. So we'll go ahead and jump into the first tab. You're going to go here. We're going to start with the government tab. We're going to do this simple, one by one. You are the government. You get to make the primary decisions for, who we're going to war with, what laws we have, what values we lean towards, things like that. You play as the crown. So there's different estates here. Each estate consists of different classes of population. So the commune, the burghers, these are like traders and merchants, artisans, the clerics, this is the church, and your nobles, your aristocrats, then the crown, that's you. So you play as the crown. The biggest thing that you want to do is make sure that your crown power, your percentage here, is as high as possible. You want to take power away from the nobles, the clerics, the burghers, the peasants, and centralize that power to you. Because the more power that you have, the more taxes you get, the lower the cost of your buildings, the more trade income you get. A lot of good things happen when you have more crown power. Estates, they get power through different things such as privileges or events that pop up. They also have a satisfaction level, so you have to keep them happy. If you piss off any of the estates, they will rebel. Taking away a privilege would also make them angry. For example, if I go to take away this privilege, it's going to reduce their satisfaction by 40%. Anything lower than, I think it's 20-25%, that's when they start to generate rebels. So be careful about going below that. In general, try not to drop ever below 30%. To make them happy, you can grant them privileges. Different estate privileges will sometimes, increase the cost of something, but they can give you a benefit elsewhere. Increase satisfaction for the estate, but be careful because it will decrease the satisfaction of the other estates, and it will also generate more estate power. So this estate will get more power from having more privileges. So just take a look always at your privileges that your estates have, especially when playing a new country. You have a parliament, which is your government itself. Every 5 years, you can have a parliament, which is essentially when you can pass an agenda issue that each one of those estates presents. And each agenda will have a certain level of support, base support that you'll generate base support, and then it'll have an extra threshold. It either start at 0 and it can go upwards. I've seen some as high as 26%. That means that I would already have 38% support, and I need 50 in order for the agenda itself to pass. So when the agenda is running, it has like modifiers, like the one to pass, one for farming, for example. While that agenda is running, it reduces the cost of your farming buildings when you go to expand them. So if I went to go expand my wheat facility, it would actually cost me less while that agenda was running during Parliament. You may not want to actually pass the agenda. Failing to pass the agenda, you lose 7 stability, but you can trade that support, for example, like a claim on Aragon. Now I have a reason to go to war. Or you can ask for a law change, because if you go over to the laws, if say I want to change an estate law here, a really good law here is this distribution of power. So you could click here to go change the law, and I could favor the clergy, the common people, the elites, or favor the ruler. And if we favor the ruler, we get more crown power at the cost of reducing the satisfaction of my estates. But I also get more tax out of this as well. So this is a good one to always do. But if I decide to change the law outside of Parliament, just say I exercise my kingly right, I'm going to have to pay a lot of stability. So this is really expensive. Stability is really hard to get. You don't ever want to do this, and you can go negative stability. So you don't want to do this and accidentally go negative. It's really hard. It's almost impossible to recover from if you do this early on. So the way you pass a law, so say you want to change one of these laws, is you would actually do it through Parliament by getting 50% support and then we're asking for a law change. You do that, it doesn't cost you stability. When the agenda fails, it only actually takes 7 stability, which that's a lot more manageable. When you're getting, depending on how much you pay, if I pay 6 ducats, I might only get 0.2 stability for that, just depending on your country and the scale of the economy. And then you're going to also have cabinet. So cabinet's really cool. This is where you're able to appoint people to do certain things around your nation. Certain nations will have a bigger list or a smaller list. Each one of these people that you can appoint come from a different estate. And please note, whenever you put someone in power that is from an estate, that means that that estate gains more estate power here. So the more generals or admirals that it has, the more privileges that they have. There's buildings that they can have that can generate them more power. That helps them. It also applies to the flip side of you. So when your kids grow up, you can appoint them to be cabinet members, which would then increase your crown power. You can also take your king, for example, and a really good way to get crown power early on is to assign him to your army or your navy as a general or admiral, and that'll also give you more crown power. So when you appoint a cabinet member, you can highlight over the different stats to see what they do, the administrative abilities, diplomatic ability, and military ability. The higher that they are, the different bonuses that they give. So hiring this guy, just click him. We'll appoint someone else. I think we didn't have, so we don't have anyone with high Diplo, so let's get someone with high Diplo, decent high Diplo. Yeah, he has a better balance. So we'll put him there too. And then we can have them do cabinet actions. So cabinet actions are really, really important. As soon as you have a cabinet seat, you always want to fill it, and you always want to use one of these cabinet actions. So what you would want to do, out of nowhere, that music just started cranking. It was like boom, bada, boom, boom, bada, boom, boom, bada, boom. Like, you heard that? Like, ah. All right. So, perfect. There's the drop. So you want to always have the cabinet doing cabinet actions. One of the great ones to do early on are strengthen government and stabilize country. These give you free stability and free monthly legitimacy. These two things right here. Really hard to get. They cost a lot of money. Other ones that you will use are the assimilation and conversion ones. You know, rebel crackdowns if you have issues with rebels. And as you can see, each one of these each one of these cabinet actions requires or uses a certain skill. So the higher that these skills here, these numbers that these cabinet members have, the bigger the bonuses that they get to actually doing these things. So when they go to perform this action, it's better based on a multitude of things as well as their own abilities. One other really important one that is very worth mentioning is changing societal values, and this will lead us into values itself. Values are, or societal values, are different ways that your nation can swing, and they are complete opposites of each other. If you go to your values in your government tab, you can see where your country lies. So you start off, every country starts off different with different society values. Early on, you know, you're going to start off with traditional economy typically and decentralized. France starts off very decentralized, just like how you see here with traditional economy. And so every month we swing towards traditional economy by 0.34 points. And then we have a maximum slider of what different benefits we get. So we can have a maximum of 10% building costs, 20% extra food production, but right now we actually only have 18% for food production and 9% for building cost. If we wanted to switch to a different value, we would want to either assign a cabinet member to change the values to that direction, and by doing that now he's doing negative 0.15 towards capital economy. But if we were to then take him off now, have him do something else, it's going to go develop that province, go back to values, see 0.33. So 0.33 towards traditional economy, and then half as much than 0.17 instead, because it was generating 0.15. So we weren't even moving in the direction of capital economy, we were just slowing down traditional economy. You also can change them through events, not just through influencing them through the cabinet members. So you can get events that pop up that allow you to swing quicker towards a direction of a value. So sometimes you'll get a good an event that says, hey, do you want to have 10 points towards centralization at the expense of pissing off some of your peasants? That's usually what you'll end up seeing. Go ahead and we'll jump into the next tab. Economy, you're going to have, obviously you want to make sure you're making more money than you're spending. We'll go ahead and start with expenses. Expenses are the easiest to break down first. So expenses, you're going to have pretty much maintenance costs, and then you're going to be spending things on cost of court, diplomatic spending, food, and stability. Fort maintenance and building maintenance right here are going to be your typical like really expensive expenses. expenses. They're going to cost you the most. So you want to lower your fort maintenance. This is a general rule of thumb. You want to lower fort maintenance, army maintenance in times of peace. No reason to spend money on that if you don't need to. Navy maintenance you can keep up if you need to maintain a Navy presence. Especially if you're playing like England or something like that, you may never turn this down, or Venice or any sea-based nation. Army maintenance, you really won't spend much on this until later ages when you start having professional armies where you're no longer using levies. We'll get more into that, but essentially you can keep this down, and then what happens is when you go to war, when you see this wheel filled, these things will automatically tick back up to full whenever you are at war. So you don't have to worry about kicking this on automatically, just about turning it back off later on. This is a really, really important slider right here. I typically max this out right away if I can, or I get it as high as reasonably possible to get legitimacy as quickly as possible. So legitimacy, if you highlight it, you break down, it tells you crown power. You know, multiple times I've said crown power, crown power, crown power. Crown power means you make more money. So try to max this out if you can, and then what happens is when it hits 100, it automatically cuts off. You know, you don't have to worry about once you hit 100, like you have to keep spending this insane cost. It actually lowers itself. Another good one too that you'll be spending money on is going to be diplomatic spending. So Diplo spending is a little wonky. This is something you're going to, and it's not wonky, but it's something you're going to move up and down throughout the game. At times you may not need a lot of it, and at times you may need to max it out. So it's really what's more important to you in that moment. It increases loyalty of subjects, so if you have a lot of subjects that are disloyal, you may want to pump this up. If you're trying to do a lot of diplomatic actions, because what this does is it increases, you know, the higher my spend is, the higher my diplomats that I get per month. So I use one diplomat to do one action. So if I want to improve my relations with France, I need to spend a diplomat in order to do so. So that would do that, and then I would recover 0.5 diplomats per month after that. Stability is important too, but it can also get very, very expensive. You want to do everything you can to find things to lower the cost of stability and the cost of court. These are going to be very, very expensive. Same thing with building maintenance. If you can do that, you're going to save yourself a lot of money. Stability. So when bad things happen, stability is something that is used. Stability is very, very important for a couple reasons. Keeps rebels down as well as keeps your estates happy. And two, it also promotes your pops. So pop promotion speed is when your peasants become burghers, like traders, or when peasants become nobles or clerics. Essentially when your lower classes become higher classes, or when they move around in between the states and classes. So pop promotion speed is important for when you build a building. How long is it going to take for that building in that location to get the correct population assigned to it and promoted into it? So if a building is going to take 100 burghers, and you don't have 100 burghers to employ, pop promotion speed is what determines how fast those 100 burghers get assigned. Yeah, stability, definitely spend some on. Definitely a good thing to have. Building maintenance as well. So this one is a little tricky. This has a couple moving parts. Essentially, your buildings have needs. Those needs, or good needs, you have to lower the cost of them. The lower the cost, the lower the maintenance. The higher the cost, the higher the maintenance. So building maintenance can get pricey if you have inflation, for example, from minting too much money. Yes, that's how you can make money, or ducats, is by printing it. So essentially using gold and silver to turn into ducats. So if you print too many, you will have inflation. The cost of things then goes up. So therefore your building maintenance goes up because the cost of things have gone up. Very, very literal. So building maintenance, though, is more or less manageable. Just make sure that your markets have the things that they need and that they're cheap to get. Taxes. Okay. Taxes are very easy to do. You automate them. That's it. Don't try to do it yourself. I don't think anyone is advising you anywhere to do it yourself. Don't. Just automate them. What it does is the AI maximizes how much taxes it's getting to how happy the estate satisfaction is. So it won't tax them more than necessary, so it won't piss them off. So it won't reduce their satisfaction, it'll keep them at the equilibrium. And that's what you want. You want them at maximum happiness so you can get the maximum taxes from them possible. Then you're also going to have trade income. So trade income you get from essentially just buying and selling items or things that you produce within your country. That's pretty much what you'll see there. You have another one where you can sell food as well. So we didn't really get into food, but by producing excess food, you get to actually make money from it. Your provinces do need food, and the more food that they have, they get different modifiers and buffs. Different resources produce different amounts of food as well. So you want to take a look at each one and be like, oh, how much does wheat produce? And you'll see that 2,000 worth of laborers that are on wheat produce 16 food each. That's 8 per one wheat resource that you make. Where's olives? Olives. Where are the legumes? Let's see if the legumes. Legumes, there you go. 5. 5 food. So certain different foods produce different amounts or different outputs. So make sure to look. But every population is going to have some level of demand. So you're still going to need legumes. You just may not need as much. You may need more wheat, for example, or more livestock. It just depends. And one more really important thing that I didn't really mention, how to get the most taxes, trade income, the benefits of all this production, reducing expenses as well. It's all based around control. If you click on a province, you'll have to go into the control map, highlight it, go to maximum control, or highlight the 100% or whatever the number is, and you can tell why you don't have control or why you do. So this province or this location is a core, it is a city, it is my capital, it is proximity to capital, meaning it is super close to my capital, which is kind of funny because it is the capital, so it still has proximity to the capital, I guess. It has a temple, and then if it had an army, it has an army there, and depending on the size, it generates a certain amount of control. If I click on the province next to it, this one has 85% control, and what that means is, so I have a potential tax base of 90.93 ducats, but my effective tax base is actually only 0.82, meaning I'm losing 0.1 ducats here. I have less crown power. Because of less control, I have less sailors, manpower, promotion, conversion speed, less levies. Not as many, I have just negative modifiers from having less control. And I have less control because mainly, well, I have way less positive modifiers on anything that's not my capital, but you also have less proximity to capital. So if we zoom out and we go to somewhere like here, right here with 18 control. So there is no proximity. It's just core. So my maximum control that I can get in this entire location is 20% minus the satisfaction. So the people here aren't that happy. So it's actually they lose they lose control because of it. So that's why keeping your people happy is important. I lose 81% of the tax. So even though I can get 1 ducat out of this for taxes, I can actually only get 0.2. So control is very important. You increase it later on through the ages by building roads, railroads, different techs. Essentially building roads increases the proximity. It makes it to where if I build a road from my capital to another location, that location is technically faster to get to, so it's closer, quote unquote. So you'll have more control. There is maritime control, meaning you can have control spread through maritime presence. The higher your maritime presence in a province, this is how you spread control or lower proximity from one location that may be, across a sea tile instead of across the land. So try to do your best to increase control. Generally, what you'll see is around your capital, you're going to have the most control. And a big rule of thumb too is build around your capital. This is where you will get the most taxes out of your capital, or out of your nation, is right around your capital. So my capital gets 18 ducats. Right next to it, they're getting 8 ducats here, one ducat here, almost two there, almost 1 and 1. That's control, and that's why it's very important that you have crown power, because crown power increases control. Why you build around your capital or build roads or things that lower proximity to your capital. These are going to be very, very important. So something that merits its own section is going to be the markets and trading aspect of things. So if you go ahead and click on your markets, you'll see your map change, and if you zoom out, you'll suddenly see Paris. Paris isn't that big. No, that's the Paris market, and the market in Paris makes all of these provinces join it. So just how the market in Burgos makes all of these provinces and locations join it here. If you select or highlight any of the markets, you'll get kind of an overview of what that market entails, what it has, what goods it has, surpluses, needs, deficits, what countries are trading inside that market. So in the Burgos market, you can see it's Castile and Navarra, and which one has, higher trade advantage, capacity, or trade profit. And each one of these things does different things. So trade advantage is really important. So if I want to take, for example, say there's wheat here. So say I decide I want to take wheat out of Paris. If I want wheat out of Paris, London wants it, Cologne wants it, Genova wants it. Whoever has the higher trade advantage gets first dibs. So that means that sometimes you can make a trade for something and think that you're going to get a unit of something, say 1 wheat, and then you get nothing. So always check your trade advantage, or when you're looking or watching a trade, that you see that you're actually receiving the good that you're supposed to be getting. Now, markets you can actually create and destroy. I'll touch on this briefly real quick. Um, So say you have a market and you want to actually make your own, you can hit create market, and it'll give you a list of locations where you're able to make a market at. And the cost of the market is based on how much market access that province has. So if a province doesn't have, good market access, it's going to get lower amounts of goods, lower amounts of food. Markets that are, tradition, I'd say anything below 60%, 70%, you want to look at creating a market. This is Paris. Some of these locations in Paris have 50% market access, 43%. So this is really, really bad. It just means that whenever they're trying to get a good, if they need something, they're not able to get a lot of their needs. So the population here is going to have needs that they're missing because they have less market access. So when you have something like this, you would want to build or create a market in an area or province that you're able to. So especially when you colonize or take over a new area, it's sometimes worth creating a market. You can also destroy a market or take over a market. So I could transfer the control of Portugal's market to me in a war, for example, or take over this province, and then I would gain control of it. And by having control of the market, you can cut someone off. You can do things like that. I think if you own the market too, you have higher trade advantage as well. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I might be. Who knows? So we touched on the market, creating a market, destroying a market, your trade advantage, trade capacity. So trade capacity is actually how many trades you can make. So if you go to your trading tab, you can see I have some trades up here already. I'm spending 1 trade capacity to transport 0.64 units of books from Tunis to my Burgos market. And if you highlight this right here, it is for every 1 point of trade capacity, I make a profit on this trade of 1.16 ducats. Now, back to crown power. I may make, like my empire itself makes 1.16 trade profit, but due to my crown power, I actually only get 22%. So of that trade, I will only receive about 0.2, 0.3 of that actual 1.41 ducats, whatever, yeah, 1.41 ducats. So keep that in mind. That's why crown power is important. Again, gonna keep smashing it into y'all's brains. Uh, Crown power, very, 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 very important. Plays into everything. The higher your trade capacity, the more things you can trade, right? The more things you can import, export within a market. So it's very important to have a decent amount of trade capacity. Uh, there right now, trade, like I said, is a little bit of a wonky place. So getting too much trade capacity, what it is that certain trades actually lose you money because they have trade route maintenance. And so there was a change in the calculation for how this is done, basically. And so it has really impacted this patch to make it to where that trade is a lot less profitable. I don't know the exact numbers. Someone smarter than me probably does. A lot of people, especially on Reddit, they do some math, and I don't know if it's right. It looks right because I'm not that smart, and it's some fancy numbers. But some people really get into the nitty gritty of this game. And essentially, trade route maintenance has basically made it to where trade's just not as profitable. So over making trade capacity is not as good. You can look here that my AI isn't even using 10 of my trade capacity. It's out of my total 19 that I have available. So I have plenty. I have 10 more points of trade capacity I could actually assign. And so, for example, if I wanted to do this trade of iron from Burgos to Tunis, I could then export this, spend one trade capacity, and it would then use my trade capacity to then start that trade. So if I have automation running, when you see this right here, you have automation kicked on. I like to do this because the AI is pretty good at balancing needs and profit. There are some, it's not the best, so you still have to do some managing, but it takes the load off because this is a system that sometimes it feels like you have to look back at multiple times every few months. It is really, really cool how deep it can get, but sometimes it feels like a lot of clicks, a lot of things to like have to manage over and over again. Like if a trade, suddenly your trade advantage drops in another market, for example, on a certain export or import you're doing, and it's like that for a year or two. You could just lose money straight unless you change that. So you kind of have to keep an eye on trade if you play trade. Um, but you can do some fun things with it and do some manipulation. Definitely take a look at that with what you can do with importing and exporting. So that's the trade capacity, trade maintenance. Market attraction is important too. That means, Paris has if you highlight it, they will have high market attraction, meaning that a lot of the provinces around Paris like to join the Paris market. So right here, due to market attraction, these provinces down here, even though they're right next to Bordeaux, and they have a better chance and even better market access probably to this market right here, they're still saying they're going to be a part of the Paris market. And that is due to market attraction. So the higher your market attraction, the higher the pull from the market center on locations. Determines how the locations join what market to be a part of. Market protection is basically what protects against market attraction. So for every point of market attraction, market protection that you have, reduces the market attraction of, say, a rival nation or just any other nation other than your own. Trade range. So this is how far you can trade. So you may not be able to reasonably trade from Kiev. You can see actually it grays out. So I can't trade based on my trade range we click. So Sevilla can trade with Constantinople, but Burgos cannot. But Burgos can trade with Stockholm market, but Sevilla cannot. So different trade ranges means you can trade with different markets. Sevilla or Burgos can neither of them can reach Kiev. And Kiev is a breadbasket. They produce a lot of livestock here. If you look at their raw materials, they just have a ton of food. Livestock is right next to them actually. But they just got a lot of food here. They just produce a lot of livestock naturally, which translates to a lot of food because I think livestock and wheat, and I think, yeah, livestock and wheat produce some of the highest food per unit. So, you know, you can't access this, so that means that Kiev would have to then trade its food into, say, Pest or Genoa before I have access to, you know, Kiev livestock. So someone, you know, a trader makes money from bringing livestock that costs zero 0.3 ducats in Kiev and then bringing it into, say, Burgos and selling it for 0.56. It's not a big trade, but you get the idea. You know, if something costs less somewhere else, costs more there, that's how you make money. So whenever you select a market too, you can actually get an idea of what that market needs. So if you select the Paris market, you can select here, sort by goods balance. So right here you can see that they produce a ton of wheat. They have a lot of supply, excess supply, more balance. If you sort again, you can see what they don't have a lot of. So they have a huge demand for pottery, but they don't have any supply whatsoever. So they're producing their own, and they are even trying to import some, but the needs of their peasants just outweighs how much they're able to produce. So the cost of pottery here is 0.54. So if you were overproducing pottery and it was cheaper wherever you were at, for example, you could then sell it to fulfill this need. So you could take a look by clicking around markets and seeing, okay, wait, what's more expensive in here, what's cost less there, and get an idea of how to play around with the price of goods. And you're going to see, based on different markets, there are different resources. One of the, I think, let's see, which raw resource is it? Mercury. Yeah, so Mercury, there's only, let's see, one. There's another one right there, two. There's not a lot there. Yeah, so total known locations on this entire map right here. There's 9, 10, not many. Versus livestock, there's just an infinite amount. So different resources will be found in different places. So Castile has a mercury deposit. So that means that this mercury deposit is going to it's going to make a bunch of money, or you have a trade opportunity. There's going to be a demand for mercury somewhere that is only going to be able to be gotten out of this market here. So that's how kind of the resources trade kind of plays in. You're going to also produce things, you know, in your provinces out of the resources. You'll make tools, weapons, things like that, and then you'll also trade those as well. Later on, I think a really good, you know, right before professional armies and building regulars, you're going to need an input of cannons and different type of weapons. And so you're going to have to build buildings for those, and building an industry around that makes it to where other countries and markets have to rely. If you have an oversupply and they're fairly cheap in your market, well, guess what? They're going to start exporting those goods out of your market, which then you make money on the trade from that. You then make money from the production of the good, and then you also control the good itself. So say you export all of, you know, the guns and cannons to Paris. Well, you go to war against France, cut them off, they no longer have guns and cannons because they relied on you and decided to not build up their own industry. The AI does that sometimes. I would imagine in multiplayer, certain things you would want to make sure you produce yourself, um, to avoid stuff like that. But that is how you can play around with, controlling or making a monopoly around something. So how would we make these other things, like these guns, these cannons? Well, you'd go to the production tab. That's going to be the next one right next to economy. You go to the production tab, and you immediately buildings, goods, food. So say you wanted to make something, you're not sure what to make, you could go to the goods tab, you could press and sort by these maximum profit filters, and it would tell you, okay, if I make a fruit resource, I'm going to make 1.21 taxable income off of this fruit resource. Or if I sort by buildings that I can make, which are going to be not your resources that you produce inside the locations, but actual buildings that you build that employ other, they take inputs of the resources that the lands produce and then make something else, such as a jeweler's guild will then use silver, as well as gems, ivory, amber, pearls to make jewelry to sell. And jewelry is needed by nobles, burghers. So nobles and burghers are spending money on these goods. So that's how you're getting profit out of these things. In order to make weaponry, you are going to need, what's the input for it? So weaponsmith, these are the production methods. So weaponsmith can do different production methods to produce different outputs. So it's saying here that it can use 0.07 lumber and 1 stone to make 0.4 weaponry. Or it can use 0.25 lumber, 0.3 coal, 0.5 tools to make 1 weaponry. So different production methods will yield different amounts. So sometimes playing in a different country, a different production method is what you want to use. If you have a country where you have no coal available and you're not making your own tools, then maybe you just want, but you have a lot of stone and a lot of lumber, well, you can make weaponry out of stone and lumber. Perfect. Whenever you go to build a building, you're going to run into something where you're only going to see the green locations are where you can build it. It's saying you can only build it though in this market. If you go to this button right here, it's going to remove the market filter, and then a bunch of other locations pop up too that you can build in. What that is that's a filter that is saying what market or how do you want to filter where you want to build at. So take off market filter if you want to see every location you can build something in. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is if you have a market selected, it's only going to show you what's available to build in that market itself and not the other markets. You do also have another filter that is handy. That is going to be the population filter. So population filter shows you what buildings are built for different classes or states. So the burghers are going to use burgher buildings. So if you filter by burgher buildings, this is what employs the burghers. If you filter by peasant buildings, this is what employs peasants. So different buildings for different filters or classes that they employ. So that's where pop promotion speed comes in with stability, like I was talking about earlier. So when you have pop promotion speed, that's how they move between peasants to soldiers to laborers, not necessarily in that order, but just how they move around between the different classes and fill different jobs. You also have an employment system. So right here, if you click on it, you have different employment systems that do different things. If you do most profitable, it gives you progress towards capital economy. So different employment systems will give you different value pushes. A lot of times switching to most profitable first is really good, especially early on. Getting this 0.1 push to capital economy right here early on is very, very nice. So that's you know, different way to manage, you know, one of your values. It's very important too, and it doesn't cost much, especially if you do it early on. So early on, try to switch this right away. And then last is going to be your food. So like we said earlier, you know, your provinces, locations, they need food. So if they don't have food, the people are not happy. If they have food or if they have a surplus of it, I know for a fact that their population growth goes up the bigger that the stockpile is. Now the stockpile has to be pretty big for it to matter. Like a 400, 350 stockpile is not going to do much for the population growth. See, it doesn't even, it's 1 month of food. That's 350 food is only 1 month of food for this entire province. So you definitely want to get you can get this up to, you know, 20,000, 10,000, you know, really, really high, and that increases the population growth in that province. So if you can, you know, you want to early on create a bread basket, winter will come, trust me, and your food, you will produce less food during certain climates. So if it is cold, you know, it's gonna affect you. You know, there's no winter here, you know, but there's winter up in Norway right now. You know, so these areas will produce less food because of it. You know, so right here, producing food, mild winter, 25% to its food production. That's a pretty heavy hit. Irrigation, one level produces 5% extra. So I'd have to build 5 levels of irrigation to make this food produce a little bit better, just to make it even again, right? So that's food, and why food? You gotta keep your people fed. If you don't, well, they're gonna rebel. Trust me. Okay, so that actually brings us into society with the talk of rebels. You got to keep everyone happy, and your society is made up of different cultures, religions, and estates of people, right? So your classes. The way culture works is you're going to have a primary culture, you can have an accepted culture, then you can have tolerated, discriminated against, hated cultures. If you have hated cultures inside your nation, you're going to have rebels. You're going to have people that don't get along. So you have to do things in order to make them, you know, accepted eventually. Accepted is basically the same as a primary culture. As long as that culture is accepted, that means that you guys are straight. You know, you're going to have the max level of relations possible with that culture. If they are tolerated, tolerated just means that you are okay with them being there. You are not going to be able to get maximum benefit from having that people present or that culture present within your empire. So you're going to get less control from provinces. You are going that, which means you're going to get less taxes. So if you take over an area with a culture that is not accepted, that means that you're not going to get anything out of that province. You're not going to have any level of until you integrate it, you'll have some level of control. You'll have a level of certain level of control, but it'll be very, very low. Most of the time, I've seen that if you don't have an accepted culture or tolerated culture, at least within a province, and then you integrate it, you're only going to get a minimum of like 10 control at the most. So you're better off a lot of the times doing something where you know, if you take over a piece of land, like Castile takes Granada, and that's where all the Andalusies are. You can see by highlighting the culture, it shows you where the biggest presence of the culture is. So highlighting them, you can see there in Granada. If we took Granada, we would get nothing out of it because that culture would hate us. So we would have zero control down here, and that means we'd get no taxes, we'd get nothing. So we'd be better off actually creating a vassal out of that land and allowing them to slowly convert over time and giving power to a vassal. And then that way we can get something from the vassal itself, like taxes. They basically give us a vassal income as well as a small army that they'll be able to make itself. The way you make cultures accepted is by spending culture capacity. So for every culture that you have accepted, you can see here you're spending 0.05 to tolerate this culture, 0.87 to accept. And the reason why it is maybe more expensive for this culture, it's going to be due to these different things. So highlight this. With Galician, we have, it's a shared culture, it looks like. So the closer that your cultures are together, the cheaper that the culture capacity is to accept it. So they're going to have a culture group and a language. So if the language and the culture group are the same, that's going to reduce it. Common language, culture group, if they're being a shared culture group or having a kindred or a good opinion of each other, that'll also reduce the cost as well. That's the biggest cost reducer there, right there. What also plays into it too is your tradition and influence. So this is your attack and defense. So the higher your influence than the other culture, the more or the cheaper it is to be able to accept them or tolerate them. So the next thing you're going to have too is the religion tab. So religion is fairly simple and straightforward, at least for now in the game. If you go to the religion map mode, you can see the different religious groups. You are going to have a ton of different types of religions that are available. So if you go to religion breakdown and take off this filter, you can see all the religions that exist within the world. Different religions have different modifiers. So Catholicism, these are the modifiers for Catholicism. So different religions will give you different things. Not really something that you interact with a lot right now. There is the international organizations of different religions, such as the Catholic Church. You will have the Pope. So the Pope, the Pope's the Pope. The Pope's gonna have some things going on. You can click through it, go through it. There's a lot. Yeah, these are all the people a part of the Catholic Church. So the list lags. It's pretty bad. So each religion can kind of have its own laws or things going on with it or mechanisms that are associated with it. Not every single religion has an organization or has as much depth to it. So keep that in mind. Another cool thing too, I didn't really touch on this, but religion and culture both automatically assimilate or convert over time, meaning that if you are if they are in your nation, there is a flat modifier to them converting to the primary culture and religion of the nation. So if you're Catholic and your primary culture is Castilian, eventually over time the people that live inside your nation will convert to those things. There are ways to speed that up. That is done through assimilation rate or your conversion rate itself. So different things buff those. That's kind of how you're going to make people part of the culture you want them to be, or the religion. You can use your government, your cabinets members to, I think we said this, but if you go to their actions, they can convert province. They can also, I think there's an option to assimilate. Yeah, so convert and assimilate. It's right above it. I'm blind. Convert province and assimilate. That means it turns them into your target culture, whatever culture you want them to go to. So see, if I want to turn them to Castilian, I could then choose which population, sort by what provinces have the least amount of Castilian, and then start there if I wanted to, or however I wanted to do it. So your people tab, this is where you're going to see what, like, the actual amount of people that makes up your population or your nation. So if you highlight this wheel, this pyramid right here, you'll see your social classes, how many people are a part of each social class and the percentage breakdown of each. You have like a breakdown too, where you can sort by their satisfaction, their literacy, how many pops are available where. So size of pops, I have a huge amount of peasants in Sevilla. So that's where the most amount of peasants are in one location itself. You can, so if you have any rebels, you can see the rebels that are inside your country. So if you take off those, always take off the filters. I've noticed that for some reason it doesn't show you rebels that are present, but basically these rebels are present, they're just not gaining support. So there's no monthly change. So there are Jewish zealots and there are Andalusi patriots that exist as rebels, but they just don't have anything that's going towards them. And so if you click on them, you can actually see like how many people are part. There's a lot of them, a lot of patriots. So keep that in mind that you do have, so because of those different cultures existing within my nation still at some level, they still exist. They're just not, this bar right here is just not filling up. So there's things that are keeping the rebellions down, and that's based on your legitimacy, your stability, your control, your satisfaction, so many different things. So next tab is going to be diplomacy. So diplomacy, very, very simple. We went over it. Diplo points is how you use any type of diplomatic actions. When you open up your Diplo menu, you're going to be able to see who your enemies are, who you're doing things with or performing diplomatic actions with. You're going to be able to see who your rivals are, and this is where you'll be able to set your rivals. So you go here, you click here, you can set rivals. Rivals are basically people that you plan to expand onto. You do want to be careful with who you set as a rival. If you set the wrong, like Portugal here, if they're red, that just means that they have declared us a rival. You can actually see who has declared us a rival by whoever has a red flag. That means that Navarra, Morocco, and Portugal. So if I wanted to make Portugal a rival, I'd go ahead and just select them. But you see, Aragon, they haven't declared me a rival. But if I declared them a rival, they're probably going to declare me a rival soon after. When you're doing rivaling, just be careful who you declare as a rival. You do get bonus modifiers when you're doing things to rivals. I believe, let's see, let's highlight it. So you'll be able to fabricate Casus Belli. You'll be able to perform actions against them that are cheaper. Just certain things that you can do to them that you can't do to others, essentially. Couple things too, you will use improve opinion a lot. So right click a country and you'll get like a little menu right here, but improve opinion, you're going to use this one a lot. If you go to open all diplomatic actions, you can see what type of actions you're able to take. Some good ones for friendly actions will be improve opinion, or ask to improve cultural opinion. When you do this one right here, this is actually how you make a culture like you. You can only do this once every 50 years with any culture. But this makes it to where it's easier to accept a culture. So if you're planning to, say, expand into Egypt or Morocco or somewhere with a large amount of a specific culture that you want to increase opinion with, this is how you do it. Improve opinion directly improves your relations with the country itself. That is a great one. Propose royal marriage. So this is how you will, when you're trying to increase your relations, you can do that through having, like, say you want an alliance with them. They don't want to accept it because they don't like you enough. Well, the way you make them like you is by, having a royal marriage with them, maybe doing certain economic actions, such as if I send them a gift, it'll make them like us as well. If I go to access actions, you can do things such as fleet basing rights, where you can offer these to them. This is really a good one too to have. That's because it spreads institutions. You can also purchase military access, fleet basing rights. You can also ask them to become a vassal. So this is really cool because you can take over territory through diplomacy. So if I had 70 more reasons, if say Navarra didn't have a negative opinion of me and they liked me more, they might actually agree to being a vassal of me. France, not so much. They're just so much stronger than us. They have, like, they're stronger, their culture is stronger than us, they make more money than us, they're farther away from us. So different reasons why they wouldn't, but a different way to play. So you don't have to always, invade someone to get what you want. So if you go back to relations right here, this create subjects button, I had mentioned earlier that when you have, say you take over Granada and it has the wrong religion, the wrong culture, what you want to do every time, most of the time, create a subject out of it. So create subject, you can either do historical or custom. You're mostly going to do custom. Historical, if you do that, it assigns the historical culture as well, so you want to be careful. So you don't want to make a historical Granada and then it's immediately the Andalusi culture. You want it to be if you want it to be Castilian, you want to create a culture with a vassal that is Castilian. So you would do custom subject, and then you would select the province that you are trying to create a subject out of. So the way you find out what province it is, select the location. Once you have the location pulled up, the top left right here tells you this is the Huebla province. So we would then look for custom subject, type in Huebla, boom, we would select it, and then you could do vassal or fiefdom. Fiefdom is basically directly controlled by you. Vassal is controlled by a person that you appoint. They effectively get you the same thing, but you want to do an even balance of both of these. So if you have one fiefdom, you want to have one vassal. If you have two fiefdoms, you want to have two vassals. So never do more than the other. What this does is it balances the power impact, the strength impact here that they get. I'm gonna be honest, I might have just read some Reddit heresy, but again, you comment below if I'm wrong. If you're supposed to do more of one or the other, let me know. But in general, though, each vassal or fiefdom will require diplomatic capacity, which you get diplomatic capacity through diplomatic spending. The more diplomatic spending you have, the more capacity you have. You also get it through technology as well. So this is how you create a vassal. So I would hit select vassal, appoint someone that I would want. Boom. I then create a vassal. There it is right there out of that province. And this vassal would then have, as you see, look, it has a ton of control, because what it is that now the capital, there's a capital right here. So this is the capital. And then all the other provinces are now drastically closer. They have proximity to capital. So that means that there's going to be more taxes generated out of here. So this country will now produce taxes and its own military. Right here. So diplomacy, I'm only getting 0.01 vassal tax from this vassal. So the happier they are, the more loyalty that they have, the more taxes that I'll get. But this province just right here just doesn't generate a lot in general. But I've seen certain places like there's a place like Fez. Fez has a good spot down here. The province of Fez. They have a few die provinces or locations, and you can get a lot of taxes out of just a small little vassal. It just depends on what their locations are. So, and then they can also generate their own army, and so that's handy to have too, because that means an extra levy size of 1,000 men just coming to fight with you. Who doesn't like free manpower, right? More taxes, more manpower. So manpower, that's your military. So military is gonna be, it can get, man, it is intricate. I love the way that they did the combat system in this game. If you've played Solaris or Crusader Kings, a lot of the times the military or the battles and the fighting is very straightforward. Pretty much, give or take, bigger number wins in those games, but in this game there's some nuance. So the nuance is going to be things like army morale, discipline, and military tactics. So these are pretty impactful. So anytime you get something that can buff these things, you want to look at that. Discipline and morale especially. What morale does, army morale is essentially how long your army can fight. Discipline is essentially, that is how much damage it does and how much damage it reduces that it takes. So it'll reduce damage taken and increase damage done the higher the discipline. Military tactics is your defense as well. So the higher your military tactics, this reduces your damage as well on each of your regiments. Army experience, I believe army experience also, yeah. So army experience as well does reduce your damage taken. You get experience through fighting as well as your regulars. You can drill them, essentially their training, which they get experience, meaning they take reduced damage. Very, very good to have. Army tradition is something that you accumulate very slowly over time. So as you can see, 0.04 a month. Every percentage, you're going to get a certain amount of morale, siege ability, great power, progress to the land societal value. So in my main Castile run, I have about 20 army tradition. You do have tradition decay, meaning that you are constantly fighting a battle of trying to increase your tradition, but then decay happens. So if you don't have modifiers that increase it, you will slowly lose tradition. There's kind of like a soft cap that goes on with this. This increases morale. That's the best part about this, and the siege ability is really nice too. It makes sieges last a lot. If you have a high siege ability, it makes sieges shorter, and sieges can take years depending on the level of the fort and the units that you're using. So you're going to have the levies, regulars, and mercenaries. Mercenaries you don't use too much of. You can actually make your regulars available to hire, so I can make these units. These are my regulars, meaning it's a standing army. It's not a levy. I can make them available for hire, so they can become mercenaries themselves if I wanted them to. So you're going to have those mercenaries, you're going to have your regulars. Your regulars are people that you can, or military, that you can actually recruit. So I can make Crusader Knight unit. It's going to cost me 100 manpower. It is then going to have a monthly maintenance cost, and it's going to use weaponry and leather, as well as -2 manpower a month. So this is a month. To construct it, I need this, but to maintain it, I need at least 2 manpower a month. That at the start of the game is more than I produce. I only make 6. So just to maintain these 250 regulars here, it's requiring 5 manpower a month. So early on, you do not really use regulars at all. Later on in the ages, past age 2, once professional armies institution hits, you will then be able to start making regulars you'll actually start to be able to have manpower and you'll be able to produce them. Levies is what you'll use for the first age and for about half of the second age. That is essentially the people that are inside the provinces. So a certain portion of the population is raised as a levy based on different modifiers, and at times of war you are able to raise all the levies. So here I have 50,000 levies available. If I was at war, I'd then be able to raise all levies. When you actually go to war, so here we're going to right click Portugal, hit declare war, you have to have a Casus Belli, or you can do no Casus Belli, but if you do that, you're going to pay stability, have extra war exhaustion, extra antagonism. And antagonism is basically a mechanism of preventing someone from conquering territory too quickly. So if you get too much antagonism early on, or just in general, what'll happen when you expand and take territory, if a country has high antagonism, anything over 50, they have a chance to actually join a coalition against you. So if the coalition gets strong enough, it's basically a group of countries that say, hey, we're gonna mess you up now. So you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure that your antagonism with countries stays relatively low. So below 50, general rule of thumb, or if you go above 50, that you check to see what countries will join a coalition. Because if they're weak and it's a bunch of small countries like, that are inside the HRE that are super weak, it doesn't matter, you know. But if it's France or England all of a sudden is wanting to join a coalition against you and they've got a big army, you might want to watch out for that. So be careful of that. Antagonism does not spread the same way. Like, so say I attack a different religion or like an opposite culture group than me, the other religion or culture group won't be as mad. The Catholics are not going to be mad that I invaded the Muslims, or the Muslims are not going to be mad that I invaded the Catholics. So, keep that in mind too. So if you're trying to expand and you're expanding into different directions, that is a good idea to spread out the antagonism. Expand in different directions, spread out your antagonism that way. It's really hard to get rid of it. It just decreases per year at a small rate, usually only like 1 to 2 a year. So if you do the math, 50 antagonism is 25 years of that country hating you. So be careful. And the more you take, and the more damaging things that you do to a country, the more antagonism you generate. So let's go back to that war screen, declare war. So if we had a Casus Belli, we'd be able to have a reason to declare war. You can create Casus Bellis. You do that through a diplomatic action, such as building a spy network. So you can build a spy network, and then you can spend spy network points on these creating Casus Bellis. But if you do not have applicable Casus Bellis, you can't create them. So if the king of Portugal is not excommunicated, you can't fabricate that Casus Belli. If they're not your rival, you can't fabricate humiliate rival. The other thing to take note is you see if you highlight the Casus Belli, it tells you whether or not you're going to have a extra cost to conquering, subjugating, extra antagonism generation, or is it going to be less? So keep that in mind. You don't want to generate a humiliate rival Casus Belli. Plan to take a territory and then go, why am I not able to take the territory? Because it costs an insane amount of war score. War score is how you figure out or how you transfer territory or do treaties and stuff like that. It's basically the currency of what the winner spends to get what he wants. So when you have a Casus Belli and you've created one, you can either do it through the spy network, like I said, or you can actually do it through Parliament, like we touched on, fabricate Casus Belli. If you do that, let's go back here, declare war. Boop. Once you have that and you select it in the menu here, we're going to go ahead and do no Casus Belli. Just to show you, give you an example. You will then have this pop up. It'll be your war menu, and you will then have war score at the top. This war score is how you determine when you can sue for peace and what you can get. So in order for me to get this one province right here, it's going to cost me 9 war score. This is the cost of peace. And that is going to be 9 war score. So I would need, even the music, you hear that? Dun, 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 dun. See, when you do things in this, the music is on point. They did a great job with it, that's for sure. You need war score in order to get the things that you want, right? So I need 9 war score in order to get this province or this location. If I wanted to get some money on top of that, I need even more war score. And as you can see, because I don't have that, they will not accept the demands. You can do different treaties as well. A really cool one, or one that I really like doing, is doing the market transfer one. Taking ducats is always a good one, as well as war reparations. War reparations, what that does is it just pays you just like a vassal does over a certain period of time. So another thing too is when you go to your army, you're obviously they're going to fight things, right? You're going to have this banner pop up. It's going to show you if you have unraised levies. Hit raise all levies. It's going to bring out all your levies. It will reduce, okay, when you raise levies, it does reduce your raw materials output and your local food production, okay? And it does reduce population, all right? So you got to be careful there. You don't want to always, so there is a cost to war. Now, it's not super bad. It's being balanced, but there's a cost, so keep that in mind. So we're gonna go ahead and let that spin up. It doesn't take too long to happen and raise those up. There we are. We can box over them, and now you can see there's 10K, 3K. You know, here's all the armies. So you can box over them to select them all, have them move to a central location. Okay, so when all your units are together, there you go. Select them all, and you can hit merge units. And what it'll do is put all those individual unit stacks into one big unit. You want to make sure too that you go to this little empty portrait and you hit replace general. So you want to assign a general. And you know how I mentioned that you can assign yourself as a general to get more estate power? You can do that. But you have to be careful though, because if you assign your king or your kid as a general, they can die in battle. Okay, that is a thing. So you want to click someone that has good stats if you don't want them to die, or you don't care. Then you assign them as a general if you're in active war. Another thing to note too is when they all join up, your units are going to be super imbalanced, meaning that this is when I said that the military part gets a little intricate. So you have two buttons really important right here. You have consolidate regiments and balance unit. These are really good. Use them every time, all the time. Every time you do a fight, every time you merge units together, do these two things. So consolidate and balance, and what that does, you just saw these numbers move around. 20,000 units just went into reserves, while 10,000 units, 10,000 units, and 10,000 units all balanced out between the different sections of the army. So there's a left flank, a center, and a right flank. And essentially what was happening is all the units were assigned to each section, and there's only so much frontage. So this frontage is how many units can fight at any given moment. If I have more units inside a section, that just means that they're sitting behind someone. They can't shoot through the person in front of me, okay? That's what frontage is simulating, essentially, that you cannot do that. And so what happens is they go into the reserves. And then when an army goes to fight, these different sections fight against each other. So putting your cavalry and manually assigning them to the left or the right flank is a very good thing to do. As you'll see, this army though, it's all levies. There's some knights, so there's a couple knights here. So if I want to change what section they are in, I go to formation, and I'd be able to see, oh, here are all the units and what section they're in. So by going to, let's go find the horsemen. Here's the cavalry. So here's my cavalry. I want to put them on the right flank, and then I want to find the other cavalry, and I want to stick them on the, do I have another cavalry? I don't. It's all just levies. Yeah, so if I had cavalry, I'd put them on the left and the right flank. Don't put more frontage than necessary on there, and then put things in the reserve. And so what ends up happening, right? We'll fast forward to a battle. Okay, caught up with the Portuguese army. Alright, so we're going to slow down, and we're going to go show you what a battle looks like. So we've got our units assigned to each section. Now we want to attack, right? What's cool is that it's going to show you whether or not you're going to do well. Now this is not always correct. You need to take this sometimes with a grain of salt and use your better judgment based on what you know about the combat. But in general, it does a pretty decent job of telling you whether or not you're going to win. So It's saying here we have a very likely side based on the fact that our commander is absolutely yacked, has great stats. We have a bigger army. Our army has higher morale, meaning we can last longer. It has better quality, meaning we hit harder. And the terrain is to our benefit, meaning that they're going to get the terrain that they're fighting on actually gives them a negative modifier when we're fighting. So we'll get a positive modifier and they'll get a negative one. So we'll go ahead, let's let the battle commence. So here they are, they're fighting, look at them go. And you can see the numbers, they're dropping, right? You see the green bar too, this is the morale, it's dropping as well. So as that goes down, that's how long they can continue fighting. When there's no more morale, the battle's done. So if you click on it, this is what the battle screen looks like itself. So this is where you start seeing the sections at play. Here's the reserves. Here's the different sections, the right flank. They have no reserves now. So what happens when you run out of reserves? And now the flank and the center have collapsed, which have then led to my center and my right flank to then deal damage. And what's happening is because they are flanking, they are doing increased damage itself to this section here as well. So the moment a section collapses, if you have all of your sections, you have a good shot of winning the battle typically. That's when you start seeing armies capitulate. And as you can see, we won this battle pretty single-handedly. We killed 2-1. So we lost 3,700 soldiers, and they lost 7,500 soldiers. We generated 25 war score from that battle itself. So now we'd be able to actually sue for peace. And let's say we get rid of the Portuguese war reps. They don't want to give us that. So even though we have war score, right? They don't want to say no. Why is that? Well, right here, if you highlight, that's war enthusiasm. So essentially, we have not fought long enough for them to care. They're just like, one battle, pff, we're gonna come back. We're gonna fight you again. So you need to exhaust them. That's done through different battles, through sieges and stuff like that. You lower their enthusiasm. You're able to then use this war score. So as soon as there's no war enthusiasm, that goes down all the way. And then you'd be able to get your peace and spend your war score. The last thing, I mean, there's 2 more tabs. Well, this will be pretty quick. Geopolitics and advances. So geopolitics is where you're going to be able to see your exploration. Whenever you have an undiscovered territory, what you can do, it'll look gray like this. It'll have a fog of war. If you're able to explore it, you can right click it. It'll open the discover menu and you'll be able to see start preparing an exploration. So you'd be able to start exploring this area, and the way you can also see through your geopolitics menu what you can explore, and how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. You then select it, say where you want to ship off from, choose someone you want to be the explorer, and then off they go after a certain amount of time. They're going to take off, explore that area, and then you will then know or have this map or a section revealed. This is the beginning of colonization, which when you have an area that you're then able to colonize because you've discovered it, you then would be able to generate a colonial charter itself and start sending people from your country to colonize. Your province tab, you'll be able to sort and see through all of your provinces, kind of see where all your population is, how happy they are, how much control they have, a little bit of extra stats and breakdown. Maritime, that we talked about this, your maritime control is going to be shown through here. So if you have high maritime presence, you will have more trade advantage. It will show you too if there are privateers as well that are reducing your trade advantage or market access. And then disease tab, diseases. So this will show you whenever you have, influenza, malaria, some type of disease that's or that has like made its way into your country. It'll be here. It'll show you how over the game how many people have died from disease. Um, Based on, it'll show you here. This bar is pretty cool. So after the Black Plague, it's typically like always like half. And basically what that means is the amount of population you have versus how many died from disease. The red will be how many people died in comparison to how many people are alive that didn't die from disease. So that's kind of cool to see that play out, because the Black Plague does happen, the bubonic plague. It happens within the first 20 years, and when that happens, you want to build some hospitals or build a hospital in your capital, like I said, and over time you build more hospitals. But you do build up disease resistance as your people get sick. They lower the chances to get that infection or that disease again if they have a high disease resistance to it. So after the bubonic plague, you have like almost 100% disease resistance, so you don't get it for a while. But then 200-300 years later, again, there's another outbreak, and your disease resistance is like 10%. It's a lot lower. So it deteriorates over time. And then it increases, as they get sick and actually die from it. So advances are fairly, they man, advances can get annoying, like how to get technology, I'm gonna be honest. Basically, it's broken down into a couple different things. You have the ages, which determine what age you're in. You have different modifiers. So the age of tradition, you have these modifiers. The age of discovery, you have these modifiers. Age of absolutionism, you have these modifiers. Right? Age 5, you have a negative modifier to subjects. Age of revolutions, look at that, negative 30 to your loyalty. That doesn't exist early on. So different ages bring different modifiers or kind of give a different theme to that time period. So from the age of 1342 to 1437, you are going to be in the age of Renaissance. You'll exit the age of traditions and go into the age of Renaissance. And within the age of Renaissance, you will have institutions that can spawn. And these institutions basically are your tech trees. So if you click your advances up here, you can see your trees. So each age has different trees, and these institutions have to spawn or be spread to your country in order for you to adopt them. Once you adopt an institution, you then unlock the ability to then research that tree. So we'll go to Age of Renaissance right here, and we'll go to this tree right here. So in order for me to get this research, I need to have the Age of Renaissance, and then I also need to unlock the Renaissance institution. So just because I'm in age 2 doesn't mean I get to research this tech. I have to also have this institution. And the way that I get this institution is, it says it right here, there's a 1% chance that it'll appear each month. Well, typically I play with the historical settings, so usually these institutions spawn in the historical places, like the New World one usually spawns in Castile. The professional armies one typically spawns in Brandenburg, Prussia, Germany, or France. I see it spawn a lot in France. Banking typically spawns in Genoa or Italy. So they can spawn in those areas, and what they do is they spread slowly via diplomacy or through trade. So the other thing, like I showed you, I think it was an economy action, or access actions of the diplomacy, fleet basing rights. When I said it spreads institutions, basically if you have this access action, it spreads your institutions from each other 10% faster. So if they have embraced professional armies and you have embraced the New World, that means that both institutions would spread to each other, or each other's countries, a little bit faster because of the agreement. So institutions are basically, if you highlight, you can see where they're at. So legalism is everywhere. Meanwhile, banking just doesn't exist. Meritocracy doesn't exist, even though it doesn't exist anywhere within Europe. It's actually spawned in Kanbalik, which is China. So it's over here in the east, and it is very, very far away. So it slowly has to make its way, and takes about 100 years actually to make its way over into at least the Spain area or Castile area. Before then, once it's spread, and it's spread at least 20%, I'm then able to actually embrace it. So then I'd be able to pay ducats in stability to embrace that institution. And this cost is lowered by the amount of spread. So if I have more than 20%, say I have 80%, the cost in ducats and stability is a lot less. If it's just at 20%, it'll be the most expensive. So if you're trying to conserve, you just need to wait a little bit, and like if you can't afford it right away, just wait for it to spread some more. Maybe it gets to 50%, and it'll be a lot cheaper based on that. So you increase the speed at which you get these researches or institutions to be spread. After you've selected, say, here, if we go to advances, this just gives you, so you can go to the research queue, it opens up the big tree, shows you everything, or you can go to just the advanced tab here, and it shows you just in a short list, okay, this is the first research and only research we have available to us. And then as soon as we research that, it says, oh, well, you have these other three that then unlock. So start going through them. A good rule of thumb is anything that gives you a flat modifier is typically really good to have. Certain things are really hard to get, and you'll learn this through playing. But the way that you make this go faster, to get this research faster, is you're going to get a monthly research progress, and you're going to get average literacy. So literacy in embraced institutions and estate satisfaction from the clergy are going to be your three biggest reasons or why your research speeds up. So the higher your literacy in your country, we'll go to the literacy map mode, the higher and faster your research will be. So you can see that, over in Morocco, they have an average literacy of like 6, 7. Within Castile, it looks like it's 10. If we go over into Byzantium, it's 15. And this is, oh man, look, average literacy over in, wow, Novgorod is 20. That's crazy. So, and different countries have different modifiers to literacy, and that's sometimes based on, like, orthodoxy, for example, like we discussed, has an average max plus 5% literacy. So that means that their entire population is an average of 5% higher. So if we were 5% higher, this would probably show as 15 instead of 10. So literacy speeds up how fast you research, and how fast an institution actually spreads around your country or between your countries. So yeah, oh my God, I think an hour and a half later we've discussed everything. We've touched on every single tab. We've talked about how everything is now connected to each other. If you watch the whole thing, I'm impressed. This is the first time ever doing a video like this. I love this game. I think it's super cool. To my friends, if you made it through all the way and you're now at this point, shout out to Regis, shout out to Giovanni, shout out to Golden Marmoset, to Lazarus, to Publius. You guys are great. To Fresh. And for anyone else that's out there that got to watch this through, thanks for watching. If you liked it and you enjoyed it, leave a comment. Let me know any feedback you may have, any suggestions, or if I got anything wrong, let me know. If you got questions, concerns, emotional outbursts, I'm down for it all. Who cares? Subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to me if you can, please. I would greatly appreciate it. I hope to bring more content to y'all going forward, and hopefully you'll see some gameplay of us and these my friends playing together. So Thank you. Have a blessed day.